Act 4. Scene. Same as Act 3. It is dawn. The first faint streaks of color, heralding the sunrise, appear in the eastern sky at left. Josie sits in the same position on the steps, as if she had not moved, her arms around Tyrone. He is still asleep, his head on her breast. His face has the same exhausted, death-like repose. Josie's face is set in an expression of numbed, resigned sadness. Her body sags tiredly. In spite of her strength, holding it herself like this for hours for fear of waking him is becoming too much for her. The two make a strangely tragic picture in the wan dawn light. This big, sorrowful woman hugging a haggard-faced, middle-aged drunkard against her breast, as if he were a sick child. Hogan appears at left rear, coming from the barn. He approaches the corner of the house stealthily on tiptoe. Wisps of hay stick to his clothes, and his face is swollen and sleepy. But his little pig's eyes are sharply wide awake and sober. He peeks around the corner and takes in the two on the steps. His eyes fix on Josie's face in a long, probing stare. Josie speaks in a low, grim tone. "Stop hiding, Father. I heard you sneak up." He comes guiltily around the corner. She keeps her voice low, but her tone is commanding. "Come here, and be quiet about it." He obeys meekly, coming as far as the boulder silently, his eyes searching her face, his expression becoming guilty and miserable at what he sees. She goes on in the same tone without looking at him. "Talk low now. I don't want him wakened," she adds strangely. "Not until the dawn has beauty in it." Hogan, worriedly. "What?" He decides it's better for the present to ask no questions. His eyes fall on Tyrone's face. In spite of himself, he is startled, in an odd, almost frightened whisper. "Begod, he looks dead." Josie, strangely. "Why wouldn't he? He is." Hogan. "Is?" Josie. "Don't be a fool. Can't you see him breathing? Dead asleep, I mean. Don't stand there gawking. Sit down." He sits meekly on the boulder. His face betrays a guilty dread of what is coming. There is a pause in which she doesn't look at him. But he keeps glancing at her, growing visibly more uneasy. She speaks bitterly. "Where's your witnesses?" Hogan, guiltily. "Witnesses?" Then forcing an amused grin. "Oh, begod, if that ain't a joke on me. Sure, I got so blind drunk at the inn I forgot all about our scheme and came home and went to sleep in the hayloft." Josie, her expression harder and more bitter. "You're a liar." Hogan. "I'm not. I just woke up. Look at the hay sticking to me. That's proof." Josie. "I'm not thinking of that, and, well, you know it." With bitter voice. "So you just woke up, did you? And then came sneaking here to see if the scheme behind your scheme had worked." Hogan, guiltily. "I don't know what you mean." Josie. "Don't lie anymore, Father. This time you've told one too many." He starts to defend himself, but the look on her face makes him think better of it, and he remains uneasily silent. A pause. Hogan finally has to blurt out. "Sure, if I'd brought the witnesses, there's nothing for them to witness that." Josie. "No. You're right. There's nothing. Nothing at all. She smiles strangely. Except a great miracle they'd never believe. Or you either. Hogan. What miracle? Josie. A virgin who bears a dead child in the night, and the dawn finds her still a virgin. If that isn't a miracle, what is? Hogan. Uneasily. Stop talking so queer. You gave me the shivers. He attempts a joking tone. Is it you who's the virgin? Faith, that would be a miracle, no less. He forces a chuckle. Josie. I told you to stop lying, Father. Hogan. What lie? He stops and watches her face worriedly. She is silent, as if she were not aware of him now. Her eyes are fixed on the wanton sky. Josie, as if to herself. It'll be beautiful soon, and I can wake him. Hogan can't retain his anxiety any longer. Josie, darling, for the love of God, can't you tell me what happened to you? Josie, her face hard and bitter again. I've told you once. Nothing. Hogan, nothing? If you could see the sadness in your face. Josie, what woman doesn't sorrow for the man she loved who has died? But there's pride in my heart, too. Hogan, tormentedly. Will you stop talking as if you'd gone mad in the night? Raising his voice with revengeful anger. Listen to me. If Jim Tyrone has done anything to bring you sorrow. Tyrone stirs in his sleep and moans, pressing his face against her breast as if for protection. She looks down at him and hugs him close. Josie croons softly. There, my darling. Rest in peace a while longer. Turns on her father angrily and whispers, Didn't I tell you to speak low and not wake him? She pauses, then quietly, He did nothing to bring me sorrow. It was my mistake. I thought there was still hope. I didn't know he'd died already. That it was a damned soul coming to me in the moonlight, to confess and to be forgiven and find peace for a night. Hogan. Josie, will you stop? Josie, after a pause, dully. He'd never do anything to hurt me. You know it. Self-mockingly. Sure, hasn't he told me I'm beautiful to him and he loves me, in his fashion? Then matter-of-factly. All that happened was that he got drunk, and he had one of his crazy notions he wanted to sleep the way he is. And I let him sleep. With forced roughness. And by God, the night's over. I'm half dead with tiredness and sleepiness. It's that you see in my face, not sorrow. Hogan. Don't try to fool me, Josie. Josie, her face hard and bitter, grimly. Fool you, is it? It's you who made a fool of me with your lies. Thinking you'd use me to get your dirty, greasy paws on the money he'll have. Hogan. No, I swear by all the saints. Josie. You'd swear on a Bible while you were stealing it. Grimly. Listen to me, Father. I didn't call you here to answer questions about what's none of your business. I called you here to tell you I've seen through all the lies you told last night to get me to... As he starts to speak. Shut up. I'll do the talking now. You weren't drunk. You were only putting it on as a part of your scheme. Hogan, quietly. I wasn't drunk. No. I admit that, Josie. But I'd had a slew of drinks, and they were in my head, or I'd never have the crazy dreams. Josie, with biting scorn. Dreams, is it? The only dream you've ever had or will have is of yourself counting a fistful of dirty money, and devil a care how you got it or who you robbed or made suffer. Hogan winces pleadingly. Josie, Josie, shut up, scathingly. I'm sure you've made up a whole new set of lies and excuses. You're that cunning and clever, but you can save your breath. They wouldn't fool me now. I've been fooled once too often. He gives her a frightened look, as if something he had dreaded has happened. She goes on, grimly accusing. You lied about Jim selling the farm. You knew he was kidding. You knew the estate would be out of probate in a few days and he'd go back to Broadway. And you had to do something quick or you'd lose that last chance of getting your greedy hooks on his money. Hogan, miserably. No, it wasn't that, Josie. Josie, you saw how hurt and angry I was because he'd kept me waiting here, and you used that. You knew I loved him and wanted him, and you used that. You used all you knew about me. Oh, you did it clever. You ought to be proud. You worked it so it was me who did all the dirty scheming. You knew I'd find out from Jim you lied about the farm, but not before your lie had done its work. Made me go after him, get drunk myself so I could be shameless. And when the truth did come out, wouldn't it make me love him all the more and be more shameless and willing? Don't tell me you didn't count on that. And you such a clever schemer. And if he once had me, knowing I was a virgin, you count on his honor and remorse, and his loving me in his fashion to make him offer to marry me? Sure. Why wouldn't he, you thought? It wouldn't hold him. He'd go back to Broadway just the same and never see me again. But there'd be money in it. And when he'd finished killing himself, I'd be his legal widow and get what's left. Hogan, miserably. No, it wasn't that. Josie. But what's the good of talking? It's all over. I've only one more word for you, Father, and it's this. I'm leaving you today, like my brothers left. You can live alone and work alone your cunning schemes on yourself. Hogan, after a pause, slowly. I knew you'd be better against me, Josie. But I took the chance you'd be so happy you wouldn't care how. Josie. As if she hadn't heard, looking at the eastern sky, which was now glowing with color. Thank God it's beautiful. It's time. To Hogan. Go in the house and stay there until he's gone. I don't want you around to start some new scheme. He looks miserable, starts to speak, thinks better of it, and meekly tiptoes past her up the steps and goes in, closing the door quietly after him. She looks down at Tyrone. Her face softens with a maternal tenderness, sadly. I hate to bring you back to life, Jim, darling. If you could have died in your sleep, that's what you would have liked, isn't it? She gives him a gentle shake. Wake up, Jim. He moans in his sleep and presses more closely against her. She stares at his face. Dear God, let him remember that one thing and forget the rest. That will be enough for me. She gives him a more vigorous shake. Jim, wake up, do you hear me? It's time. Tyrone half wakens without opening his eyes, mutters, What the hell? Dimly conscious of a woman's body, cynically. Again, eh? Same old stuff. Who the hell are you, sweetheart? Irritably. What's the big idea waking me up? What time is it? Josie. It's dawn. Tyrone, still without opening his eyes. Dawn? He quotes drowsily. But I was desolate and sick of an old passion when I awoke and found the dawn was gray. Then with a sneer, they're all gray. Go to sleep, kid, and let me sleep. He falls asleep again. Josie, tensely. This one isn't gray, Jim. It's different from all the others. She sees he is asleep, bitterly. He'll have forgotten. He'll never notice. And I'm the whore on the train to him now. Not... Suddenly she pushes him away from her and shakes him roughly. Will you wake up, for God's sakes? I've had all I can bear. Tyrone, still half asleep. Hey, cut out the rough stuff, kid. What? Awake now, blinking his eyes with dazed surprise. Josie. Josie, still bitter. That's who, and none of your damned tarts. She pushes him. Get up now so you won't fall asleep again. He does so with difficulty. Still in his sleepy daze, his body stiff and cramped. She conquers her bitter resentment and puts on her old, free and easy kidding tone with him, but all the time waiting to see how much he will remember. You're stiff and cramped, and no wonder. I'm worse from holding you, if that's any comfort. She stretches and rubs her numbed arms, groaning comically. Holy Joseph, I'm a wreck entirely. I'll never be the same. Giving him a quick glance. You look as if you'd drawn a blank and were wondering how you got here. I'll bet you don't remember a thing. Tyrone, moving his arms and legs gingerly, sleepily. I don't know. Wait till I'm sure I'm alive. Josie. You need an eye-opener. She picks up a bottle and glass and pours him a drink. Here you are. Tyrone takes the glass mechanically. Thanks, Josie. He goes and sits on the boulder holding the drink as if he had no interest in it. Josie, watching him. Drink up or you'll be asleep again. Tyrone. No, I'm awake now, Josie. Funny. Don't seem to want a drink. Oh, I've got a head all right, but no heebie-jeebies yet. Josie. That's fine. It must be a pleasant change. Tyrone. It is. I've got a nice, dreamy, peaceful hangover for once. As if I'd had a sound sleep without nightmares. Josie. So you did? Devil a nightmare, I ought to know. Wasn't I holding you and keeping them away? Tyrone. You mean you... Suddenly. Wait a minute. I remember now. I was sitting alone at a table in the inn, and I suddenly had a crazy notion I'd come up here and sleep with my head on you. So that's why I woke up in your arms. Shamefacedly. And you let me get away with it. You're a nut, Josie. Josie. Oh, I didn't mind. Tyrone. You must have seen how blotto I was, didn't you? Josie. I did? You were as full as a tick. Tyrone. Then why didn't you give me the bum's rush? Josie. Why would I? I was glad to humor you. Tyrone. For God's sake, how long was I cramped on you like that? Josie. Oh, a few hours only. Tyrone. God, I'm sorry, Josie, but it's your own fault for letting me. Josie. Oh, don't be apologizing. I was glad of the excuse to stay awake and enjoy the beauty of the moon. Tyrone. Yes, I can remember what a beautiful night it was. Josie. Can you? I'm glad of that, Jim. You seemed to enjoy it the while we were sitting here together before you fell asleep. Tyrone. How long a while was that? Josie. Not long. Less than an hour, anyway. Tyrone. I suppose I bored the hell out of you with a lot of drunken drivel. Josie. Not a lot, no. But some. You were full of blarney, saying how beautiful I was to you. Tyrone, earnestly. That wasn't drivel, Josie. You were. You are. You always will be. Josie. You're a wonder, Jim. Nothing can stop you, can it? Even me, in the light of dawn, looking like something you'd put in the field to scare the crows from the corn. You'll kid at the day of judgment. Tyrone, impatiently. You know damned well it isn't kidding. You're not a fool, you can tell. Josie, kiddingly. All right, then, I'm beautiful and you love me. In your fashion. Tyrone. In my fashion, eh? Was I reciting poetry to you? That must have been hard to take. Josie. It wasn't. I liked it. It was all about beautiful nights and the romance of the moon. Tyrone. Well, there was some excuse for that anyway. It sure was a beautiful night. I'll never forget it. Josie. I'm glad, Jim. Tyrone. What other bunk did I pull on ya? Or, did old John Barleycorn pull? Josie. Not much. You were mostly quiet and sad. And a kind of dazed. As if the moon was in your wits as well as whiskey. Tyrone. I remember I was having a grand time at the inn, celebrating with Phil. And then suddenly, for no reason, all the fun went out of it. And I was more melancholy than 10 Hamlets. He pauses. Hope I didn't tell you the sad story of my life and weep on your bosom, Josie. Josie. You didn't. The one thing you talked a lot about was that you wanted the night with me to be different from all the other nights you'd spent with women. Tyrone, with revulsion. God, don't make me think of those tramps now. Then with deep, grateful feeling. It sure was different, Josie. I may not remember much, but I know how different it was from the way I feel now. None of my usual morning after stuff. The damned sick remorse that makes you wish you'd died in your sleep so you wouldn't have to face the rotten things you're afraid you'd said and did the night before. When you were so drunk you didn't know what you were doing. Josie. There's nothing you said or did last night for you to regret. You can take my word for it. Tyrone, as if he hadn't heard, slowly. It's hard to describe how I feel. It's a new one on me. Sort of at peace with myself and this lousy life, as if all my sins had been forgiven. He becomes self-conscious, cynical. Nuts with that sin bunk, but you know what I mean. Josie, tensely. I do. And I'm happy you feel that way, Jim. A pause. She goes on. You talked about how you'd watched too many dawns come creeping grayly over dirty window panes with some tart snoring beside you. Tyrone winces. Have a heart. Don't remind me of that now, Josie. Don't spoil this dawn. A pause. She watches him tensely. He turns slowly to face the east, where the sky is now glowing with all the colors of an exceptionally beautiful sunrise. He stares, drawing a deep breath. He is profoundly moved, but immediately becomes self-conscious and tries to sneer it off, cynically. God seems to be putting on quite a display. I like Belasco better. Rise of Curtain, Act 4 stuff. Her face has fallen into lines of bitter hurt, but he adds quickly and angrily, God damn it, why do I have to pull that lousy stuff? With genuine deep feeling. God, it's beautiful, Josie. I'll never forget it. Here with you. Josie. Her face clearing. Simply. I'm glad, Jim. I was hoping you'd feel beauty in it by way of a token. Tyrone, watching the sunrise. Mechanically. Token of what? Josie. I don't know. Token to me that... Never mind, I forget what I meant. Abruptly changing the subject. Don't think I woke you just to admire the sunrise. You're on a farm, not Broadway. And it's time for me to start work, not to go to bed. She gets to her feet and stretches. There is a growing strain behind her free and easy manner. And that's a hint, Jim. I can't stay entertaining you. So go back to the inn. That's a good boy. I know you'll understand the reason and not think I'm tired of your company. She forces a smile. Tyrone gets up. Of course, I understand. He pauses, then blurts out guiltily. One more question. You're sure I didn't get out of order last night and try to make you or anything like that? Josie. You didn't. You kidded back when I kidded you the way we always do. That's all. Tyrone. Thank God for that. I'd never forgive myself if... I wouldn't have asked you, except I pulled some pretty rotten stuff when I was drawing a blank. He becomes conscious of the forgotten drink he has in his hand. Well, I might as well drink this. The bar at the inn won't be open for hours. He drinks, then looks pleasantly surprised. I'll be damned. That isn't Phil's rot gut. That's real, honest-to-God bonded bourbon. Where... This clicks in his mind, and suddenly he remembers everything, and Josie sees that he does. The look of guilt and shame and anguish settles over his face. Instinctively, he throws the glass away. His first reaction, one of loathing for the drink, which brought back memory. He feels Josie staring at him and fights desperately to control his voice and expression. Real bourbon. I remember now you said a bootlegger gave it to Phil. Well, I'll run along and let you do your work. See you later, Josie. He turns toward the road. Josie, stricken. No. Don't, Jim. Don't go like that. You won't see me later. You'll never see me again now, and I know that's best for us both. But I can't bear to have you ashamed. You wanted my love to comfort your sorrow, when I'm so proud I could give it. Pleadingly. I hoped for your sake you wouldn't remember, but now you do. I want you to remember my love for you gave you peace for a while. Tyrone stares at her, fighting with himself. He stammers defensively. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember. Josie, sadly. All right, Jim. Neither do I then. Goodbye, and God bless you. She turns as if to go up the steps into the house. Tyrone stammers. Wait, Josie. Coming to her. I'm a liar. I'm a louse. Forgive me, Josie, I do remember. I'm glad I remember. I'll never forget your love. He kisses her on the lips. Never. Kissing her again. Never. Do you hear? I'll always love you, Josie. He kisses her again. Goodbye. And God bless you. He turns away and walks quickly down the road off the left without looking back. She stands watching him go for a moment, then she puts her hands over her face, her head bent, and sobs. Hogan comes out of her room and stands on top of the steps. He looks after Tyrone, and his face is hard with bitter anger. Josie, sensing his presence, stops crying and lifts her head dully. I'll get your breakfast in a minute, Father. Hogan, to hell with my breakfast. I'm not a pig that has no other thought but eating. Then pleadingly, listen, darling. All you said about my lying and scheming and what I hoped would happen is true. But it wasn't his money, Josie. I did see it was the last chance. The only one left to bring the two of you to stop your damned pretending and face the truth that you loved each other. I wanted you to find happiness. By hook or crook or one way or another, what did I care how? I wanted to save him, and I hoped he'd see that only your love could. It was his talk of the beauty he saw in you that made me hope. And I knew he'd never go to bed with you even if you'd let him unless he married you. And if I gave a thought to his money at all, that was the least of it. And why shouldn't I want to have you live in ease and comfort for a change, like you deserve, instead of in this shanty on a lousy farm slaving for me? He pauses, miserably. Can't you believe that's the truth, Josie? And not feel so bitter against me? Josie, her eyes still following Tyrone, gently. I know it's the truth, Father. I'm not bitter now. Don't be afraid I'm gonna leave you. I only said it to punish you for a while. Hogan, with humble gratitude. Thank God for that, darling. Josie forces a teasing smile and a little of her old manner. A ginger-haired, crooked old goat like you to be playing Cupid. Hogan. His face lights up joyfully. He is almost himself again. Ruefully. You had me punished, that's sure. I was thinking after you'd gone I'd drown myself in Harder's ice pond. There was this consolation in it. I knew that the bastard would never look at a piece of ice again without remembering me. She doesn't hear this. Her thoughts are on the receding figure of Tyrone again. Hogan looks at her, sad face, worriedly. Gently. Don't, darling. Don't be hurting yourself. Then, as she still doesn't hear, he puts on his old, fuming, irascible tone. Are you gonna moon at the sunrise forever into me with the sides of my stomach knocking together? Josie, gently. Don't worry about me, Father. It's over now. I'm not hurt. I'm only sad for him. Hogan. For him? He bursts out in a fit of smoldering rage. May the blackest curse from the pit of hell. Josie, with an anguished cry. Don't, Father. I love him. Hogan, subsides, but his face looks sorrowful and old. Dully. I didn't mean it. I know whatever happened, he meant no harm to you. It was life I was cursing. With a trace of his natural manner, and begod, that's a waste of breath if it does deserve it. Then she remained silent, miserably. Or maybe I was cursing myself for a damned old scheming fool like I ought to. Josie turns to him, forcing a teasing smile. Look out. I might say amen to that. Gently. Don't be sad, Father. I'm all right, and I'm well content here with you. Forcing her teasing manner again. Sure, living with you has spoilt me for any other man anyway. There'd never be the same fun or excitement. Hogan plays up to this in his fuming manner. There will be excitement if I don't get my breakfast soon, but it won't be fun, I'm warning you. Josie, forcing her usual reaction to his threats. Don't be threatening me, you bad-tempered old tick. Let's go in the house and I'll get your damned breakfast. Hogan, now you're talking. He goes in the house through her room. She follows him as far as the door, then turns for a last look down the road. Josie, her face sad, tender, and pitying. Gently. May you have your wish and die in soon, Jim darling. May you rest forever in forgiveness and peace. She turns slowly and goes into the house. Curtain.